Welcome back to another episode of the Ian Fritts Show. I'm here. I'm watching them reveal the college football playoff rankings, the third to last ones, I guess, technically, live. Not live for you, again, but it's live for me. They're doing it right now. I'm watching. You get my live reactions. Colorado slid down to number 25. Don't hate that. That's where I had them in my rankings. So me and the committee on some things are aligned. Kansas State jumps up. They have the win over Colorado, so it makes sense that they would be above Colorado now that they have the same records. So the committee, hey, they're given the benefit of the doubt to the team that beat Colorado. So that's a head-to-head, but they're very inconsistent with the head-to-heads. As we know, the committee, they don't like their consistency. They like to change it up. Illinois coming in at number 23. I'm fine with that. A lot of people think Illinois hasn't done much. If you watch them, I think they're a top 25 football team just by visual. I like the way they play football. UNLV coming in at number 22. They have a long shot. It's not really a long shot. All they got to do is win their game this weekend and then win against Boise State, and they're in the college football playoff most likely. Them or Tulane, that would be. Missouri coming in at number 21. With Brady Cook, much better football team. Everybody knows that. Everybody should recognize that. Texas A&M drops 5 spots after a 4 overtime loss to Auburn. That's a big drop for Texas A&M, like a substantial drop. If they beat Texas, they're in the SEC championship game, which I would think that means they're in the college football playoff, but maybe not. They might be too far back, ladies and gentlemen. BYU drops down to number 19. Not shocking there. They still control. They don't control their destiny. Iowa State and Arizona State do. So BYU is going to need some help. Iowa State's up to 18. Probably Arizona State's going to be 3 or 4 ahead of them, I would think. Arizona State could be 17 for all we know. I'm not sure how the committee views these Big 12 teams, and they don't view them that well, I don't think. Tulane at 17. So Tulane is sneaking up here, ladies and gentlemen. Tulane is doing the slow climb. Both of their losses are to Power 5 opponents, Oklahoma and Kansas State. Everybody else they've absolutely destroyed. So Arizona State right there at number 16. Sun Devils, big win against BYU. They would be the team I would be afraid of in the Big 12. They would be the team I would say, I don't want to play them, get them off my schedule. They're the team that I think is the most scary. However, we'll get to the picks in the second half of this show, and I'll tell you what I think in the Arizona State game. So stay tuned for that. South Carolina at number 15. So I would assume Clemson is number 14 or 13 right above them. And the winner of that football game has a very, very good shot. So I assume Ole Miss is probably going to be 14 then? I would have South Carolina above Ole Miss, except the head-to-head, ladies and gentlemen. Ole Miss is going to be ahead of South Carolina. Now, do I think South Carolina is playing better football than Ole Miss right now? Hand up, I do. However, the committee so far is sticking to the head-to-head right now. Earlier in the couple rankings, they were inconsistent with that, so it's good to see them holding that up. I'm all for head-to-head results. In this type of system that we have now, I think head-to-head should matter a lot. And right now, they're showing us, hey, we care about head-to-head. Alabama's going to be 13 or 12, ladies and gentlemen. Alabama is going to be 13 or 12, so that means they're probably going to be either the first team out or the there they are, 13 right there, folks. This is setting up for Alabama to have a shot to be in the college football playoff. And I know people are thinking, this is outrageous, Ian. You need to write in a letter, and probably the committee should be abolished. It should be outlawed if Alabama gets into the playoffs, because quite frankly, the loss they have to Oklahoma is not a loss you want on your schedule right now. It's not a loss you want on your resume. They got absolutely whooped from the beginning of that football game, and they dropped to number 13. Interesting from the committee to put them at 13. I thought they would probably drop lower than that. They did not. But those three, so that means Clemson is going to be 12 here, folks. Clemson would be the first team out. Clemson or Indiana. Yeah, so Clemson would be the first team out of the playoffs right now, because the Big 12 team would jump them. The Big 12 team would jump them and get that 12th seed. So Clemson would be the first one out. If they beat South Carolina, could that jump them above an Indiana, which I think Indiana's probably going to be 11. And if Indiana isn't 11, they're number 10, just behind Boise State or ahead of Boise State. So Boise State is sitting pretty, ladies and gentlemen. What would be interesting to me, though, is Boise State winning their game this weekend and then losing the conference title game to UNLV. What do they do with UNLV and Tulane? Because UNLV has that, they avenged their loss against Boise State. They avenged their loss. The other loss was in, I believe, overtime to Syracuse. So that's a solid loss for a UNLV program. What do they do with them in Tulane if Tulane would go on to win their conference? Boise State comes in at number 11. So what would UNLV do? What would the committee do with UNLV and Tulane if Boise State loses the Mountain West championship game? That's something very interesting to think about. And not everybody's thinking about it because they're thinking Boise State's just going to hand the ball to Ashton Jeanty. He's going to win the Heisman. Everything's fine and dandy. It's all good for Boise State. They're in. They are locked in. And folks, I watched the UNLV Boise State game. I don't know if you did. I watched all the games. I watched it. That was a close football game. That could have gone either way. It got a little away from at the end there. But watch out for UNLV. They could sneak into the college football playoff here, and it would not shock me at all. Here we go, top 10. Indiana coming in at number 10. I think Indiana's probably safe there. I think Indiana is probably safe there. Now, obviously, if they lose to Purdue, get them out. Get them out. SMU at 9, folks. I think SMU is locked into the college football playoff at 9. They're already clinched in the ACC title game. If they lose the ACC title game to Miami or Clemson, I don't think the committee could drop them out. They would have 2 losses, one of them to BYU and then the other in the ACC title game against a team that's getting a top 4 bye. You can't drop them out. You can't, especially with them being at number 9 right now. SMU in a really good spot. The Ponies are rolling. And I wouldn't want to play them right now, quite frankly. I would steer clear of the Ponies. Steer clear of the Ponies. Tennessee at number 8. Lock them in unless they lose to Vanderbilt. Get them out if they lose to Vanderbilt. But I don't foresee them losing to Vanderbilt. And anything you say you don't foresee in this college football season, you could very well foresee in this college football season because it has been that chaotic and that wild, folks. Just absolute craziness all year long. So it wouldn't shock me. Nothing would shock me this weekend other than Purdue beating Indiana. That would be a shock. But all these other top 12, top 15 teams, they've got tough matchups, tougher than you would think. Georgia at number 7. Georgia's obviously in the playoff. 3 losses if they lose the SEC title game. They're in. They are in the college football playoff. I know. People are going to hate that. They're in even if they lose the SEC title game. And even if they lose to Georgia Tech and they lose the SEC title game, that would put them at 9-4. Georgia's still in. Georgia is still in the college football playoff. I'm not some SEC propagandist here, okay? With the schedule they have and the wins they have on their schedule and how they've probably played in their losses, you got to put them in the playoff. You got to. You got to. Miami at number 6. Miami, look, Georgia Tech beat Miami. Georgia Tech's playing Georgia. That's a common opponent for those 2 teams. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Miami, depending on how they play against Georgia Tech. Excuse me, how they play this weekend against Syracuse. Syracuse is a good football team. They have a good quarterback. They can throw the football. And Miami, newsflash, defense hasn't been stellar. They have not been stellar. It reminds me of the Oklahoma teams with Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. It reminds me of those teams where the defense is non-existent at times, but the offense could light you up at any point. And they have a Heisman-worthy quarterback. So Miami at number 6. Notre Dame at number 5. Fighting Irish. They're in the playoff, ladies and gentlemen, except they're not because they play USC this weekend. And you're thinking USC. 6-5 USC, Ian? 6-5 USC? They have almost as many losses as they do wins. They're not beating the Fighting Irish. The Trojans can't do that. Let me tell you this. USC has led in the 4th quarter in every single one of their football games. And they have 5 losses. Just a food for thought there. Penn State at 4. Top 4 is probably not going to change at all. Texas at 3. I would assume Ohio State at 2. And Oregon at number 1. Only change in the top 5 was Notre Dame bumping up. So the first team out would be Clemson in this scenario, as I outlined earlier. You have Alabama as the number 13 seed, the second team out. This is obviously if all these teams win out. this is how it's going to look. So you got Boise State as the 4 seed, Oregon is the 1, Miami is the 3, Texas as the 2 seed. The 5-12 matchup, that would mean we're getting Ohio State, Arizona State, because Arizona State is that highest ranked Big 12 team. That's the Big 12 team I wouldn't want to play. So we get Ohio State going to Arizona, or excuse me, Arizona State going to Ohio State. Sign me up. I would pick Ohio State. I would bet on Ohio State probably. Georgia's your 8 seed. Penn State's your 6 seed. Notre Dame is your 7 seed. And you're thinking, Ian, didn't you just say Notre Dame was number 5? Not how the seeding works, ladies and gentlemen. We have SMU going to Notre Dame, Indiana going to Penn State, Big Ten matchup, Tennessee going to Georgia. That would be a rematch of a game we saw earlier this year. We saw how that worked out. And look, I believe this is the first time the rankings have come out where we're getting a rematch in round 1. Someone can fact check me on that. But that's a little disappointing. So hopefully something shakes up in these next couple weeks where we don't get a lot of rematches. It's bound to happen at some point in the 12-team era. And I'm okay with that, but I don't want a ton of them, if I'm being honest with you. I don't want a ton of them, but it's going to happen when we have 12 teams. Because year in and year out, those teams are probably going to play in the regular season. That's it for the reaction part. Overall, I think the committee probably has saved themselves some heartache by not doing anything crazy in these rankings. Indiana, some people could probably argue they would be ahead of SMU, maybe even ahead of a Tennessee. But I'm honestly fine with what the committee has done. I thought maybe I was going to be upset and maybe we need to banish them and get rid of them. We don't. Stay tuned for the picks. It's going to segue to me sitting right here, except we're going to do the top 25 teams and who I think is going to win their game against the spread. Let's get into it. All right, folks, it's the pick section of the video. You saw me live react to the college football playoff rankings. Thought they did a pretty good job overall. Some people are thinking they're trying to sneak Alabama in. Wouldn't surprise me. I've come to terms with that already, so you're not going to see a lot of outrage from me unless it actually happens. But let's get into the picks. You see the record next to me. This is credibility, ladies and gentlemen. Huge winning record. Awesome stuff by me this year, not to toot my own horn. We only go by the gut here at the Ian Fritts Show. That means you're not getting no models. You're not getting any sort of what do the stats say? Let's look at the data. No. Data lies. Ian's gut does not. That's the saying at this one. Oklahoma State at Colorado. Colorado minus 17 at the time of this video. Lines are subject to change. We do not have a bookie here, so I just get them off of the website I use. No free ads. Oklahoma State has been a dumpster fire of a program this year, ladies and gentlemen. And you're thinking, Ian, obviously, yeah, they stink. Give me Colorado. Give me minus 17. It doesn't matter. Home game. They still have a chance to make the college football playoff. Long shot, but they have a chance. So, yeah, it's probably going to be Colorado. Wrong. Something in my gut has told me, Ian, Oklahoma State's going to keep this one closer than Colorado wants it. Oklahoma State probably doesn't win, but they covered the 17. Here's a fun one. Kansas State at Iowa State, minus 2.5 for the Cyclones. I believe this is Farmageddon. I'm also confused sometimes because I would think Farmageddon would be Kansas State, Kansas, or Iowa State, Iowa. But I'm pretty sure this is Farmageddon. All the Midwest states, they just need to all just call all of their games that they play against each other Farmageddon. And we'll just have different variations of it. My 2 cents on it. But rivalry game nonetheless. Both of these teams are still alive. Kansas State needs to win and needs some help to make the Big 12 championship game. Iowa State, they win, they're in. And if they're in the Big 12 championship game, they have a chance to be in the college football playoff. So Iowa State controls their destiny. Kansas State does not. Some would say that's not how we thought it would be at the end of the season. But also, some would say that is how we thought it would be. And those people would be liars. Because if you ask me, it was Kansas State would probably control their own destiny at the end of the season. But no. Rocco Becht and the Cyclones, Matt Campbell, they have a chance to do something special. Are they going to do something special? They are, ladies and gentlemen. Give me Iowa State. Give me Iowa State minus 2.5. Northwestern at Illinois. Not much to say about this one, folks. It's Illinois minus 7.5 all day, every day. Nevada at UNLV. It's UNLV minus 17.5. every time, every day of the week. Give me the Rebels every single time. Um, here's an interesting one. Arkansas at Missouri. So Brady Cook is back. He looks healthy from what I can tell. He's playing a lot better football since he's returned from his injury. Excuse me, I got these little hiccups coming on. That's just part of life, ladies and gentlemen. Hiccups are a part of life, and don't shame anybody for it. Arkansas, good offense. However, Missouri's defense is a solid group. And when I thought, I always do the game where what's the line gonna be? And then I look at it and I'm like, hey, Ian, you could be a line maker in Vegas. And I thought this is probably gonna be 8-9 range. And poof, I look at it, -3.5. And that would tell me take Missouri minus the 3.5. And it did because the gut had already taken Missouri no matter what the points were. That's how the gut works, ladies and gentlemen. You can't study the gut. It's not something you can point to, put on a board and say, this is what the gut does. This is what it means. Ian's got it all figured out. No. It changes week to week, day by day, hour by hour sometimes, minute by minute. You can't pin it down. Going to take a sip before I get to what some are calling the game of the century. Patented mug. Keeps your stuff cold, looks good, and it makes you feel good, depending on what you put in it. Texas at Texas A&M. Some people are calling it the game of the century. I for one, am not calling it that. You can call it the game of the century if you want, but I will not do that. Okay, I will not do that. Texas -6. They haven't played this game in who knows how long. A lot of people do. Don't ask me. It's been 15 years or whatever. The Aggies, they still control. They still control what they can control. They win, and in my opinion, I think they get to the SEC championship game, and no matter what happens in that game, I think they're in the college football playoff. Some of you are thinking that's psychotic, Ian. They would have 4 losses. And while I would agree with you, it would be crazy to see a 4-loss SEC team get in the college football playoff. I think the committee would not want to set the precedent of leaving out the SEC runner-up in favor of other SEC teams that did not make the championship game. That would be a nightmare scenario for everyone, for all the optics involved with the college football playoff. You can't do it. It won't happen. So if Texas A&M wins this game, they're in the college football playoff, no matter what. I'm just trying to get it out there because they have a legitimate shot to win this football game this weekend. It's not like Texas A&M is some terrible football team. Yeah, they lost to Auburn last weekend. A lot of teams have probably lost to Auburn this year, and then Auburn just decided to hand them the football. I can think of at least 3 cases. Texas A&M, on the other hand, just decided to drop the ball in the end zone. Some of you Texas A&M fans out there, boom, dagger through the heart. My jaw was on the floor as well. Couldn't believe it. They win this weekend, they are in. No doubt in my mind. If the committee leaves out the SEC runner-up, it would be devastating. Texas, on the other hand, interesting situation developing there in Austin. Quinn Ewers has had an MRI. I haven't seen any results from this MRI. I'm not a doctor. Nobody's talking to me either. So we're going to see. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? It doesn't matter because it's Texas A&M plus the 6. Do they win? I'm not sure, but it's Texas A&M plus the 6. Houston at BYU, -13.5 for BYU. It's the Cougars all day long, ladies and gentlemen. I guess this is both Cougars. Houston Cougars? Yeah, Houston. Give me the BYU Cougars. -13.5. Memphis at Tulane, -14.5 for the Green Wave. 2 elite logos going at it right here. I love the blue and gray tiger. Something about it just screams awesome logo. It's rivalry weekend, ladies and gentlemen, and some of these lines are outrageous. It's the Memphis Tigers +14.5. Free money this weekend. I'm not going to say that because every time I've said free money, it has not ended well. So it's not free money. Arizona State -9 at Arizona. These teams have flipped expectations. You thought Arizona, yep, they're getting Ted McMillan back. They got Fafita back there. They're still going to be ready to roll in the Big 12. And you thought Arizona State, no. Kenny Dillingham, year 2, it's not going well. They haven't won any football games. And now we're at the end of the season, and you think, what has happened in the state of Arizona? I'm not sure, ladies and gentlemen, but all I know is the Wildcats, Ted McMillan, he's going to have a good football game this weekend. I saw some things against BYU that concerned me a little bit from the Sun Devils in their secondary. BYU was able to expose some things on that back end. Would not be surprised if Tetero McMillan had one of the games of his life, and it's going to be hard to compete with that because he's had a lot of them. But give me Arizona plus the 9 points there. South Carolina at the Clemson Tigers, minus 2.5 for Clemson. This is a game I would love to be at. If any of you can make that happen, make it happen for me, because I can't. But give me South Carolina, the Gamecocks. I think their defensive line is going to have a field day. I think they force multiple turnovers, and the gut just told me 2.5. I think the wrong team's favored. Wrong team's favored, folks. Mississippi State at Ole Miss. It's Ole Miss minus 26.5. Look, the Egg Bowl. It's going to be disappointing in the Egg Bowl this year, probably on both sides because Ole Miss season is over and Mississippi State's season was over before it began. Auburn at Alabama. It's the Alabama Crimson Tide minus 11.5. I think they bounce back this weekend. They still have something to play for. They're right. They can taste the college football playoff a little bit. The aroma is still in front of their face. It's like Thanksgiving's coming up, guys, a couple days. When you get that plate of food and you're like, I can smell it. They can still smell it. Now, whether or not they get to eat the food is not up to them, but they can smell it. And I think they get the win against the Auburn Tigers this weekend. So give me Alabama minus 11.5. Oregon State at Boise State. A lot of people are not talking about this game, and I think they should. Oregon State's not a terrible football team. They're not good, but they're not terrible. So give me them plus the 20.5. I think it's too many points. Purdue at Indiana. Purdue is one of the saddest football teams in all of college football. It's bad. So give me Indiana minus 29.5. Cal at SMU. Cal's not a bad team. They are a little bit juiced up because their equipment manager made one of the best tackles of the weekend. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go on Twitter and find that video because it was awesome. But give me the Ponies minus 13.5. Tennessee minus 10.5 at Vandy. A lot of people are saying this is one of those games that you should keep an eye on, and I think you should. But I think it's about probably like half an eye. Half an eye when you got the quad box on. You should probably have half an eye on this one and 3/4 of an eye and the rest of your eyeballs on the other three games because I think Tennessee, it may be close for a little bit, but give me Tennessee minus 10.5 and pull away from Vandy in this one. Georgia Tech at Georgia. Rivalry weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Give me the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Never thought I would say that. I was very low on Georgia Tech coming into the season. Hand up. I was wrong. I admit it. Forgive me. Forgive me there at Georgia Tech. But give me Georgia Tech plus 19.5. It's a neutral site game. It's not technically at Georgia. There will probably be more Georgia fans there. But I like the Yellow Jackets to cover this one. Miami at Syracuse. I talked a little bit about it while the rankings were happening. Syracuse can sling the football around. That's kind of a weakness of Miami right now. So it would not shock me if this is a shootout, 40-45, something like that. Give me the orange to cover this football game. Notre Dame, minus 7.5 at USC. This one is probably the most obvious. Take the points with USC of all year. Ultimate uniform matchup, just elite helmet matchup as well. I'm so excited for this football game, ladies and gentlemen. Cannot wait to watch this one. But give me the Trojans plus 7.5. Next game up, it's Penn State minus 25 against Maryland. The Terps, they got no chance. Michigan at Ohio State minus 20.5 for the Buckeyes. And you're thinking, Ian, this is the most obvious bet of all time. Michigan has stunk this year. They've been one of the worst highly ranked teams coming into the season. And just an overall disappointment. Agree with you. However, the gut disagrees with my agreement with you. And it tells me, take the Wolverines, take them plus 20.5. Will they win? Absolutely not. Will they cover? Absolutely. Resounding yes. Give me the Wolverines to cover. Last game up, Washington at Oregon, minus 19.5 for Oregon here. The gut would tell you, number one team in the nation, undefeated. They're in the Big Ten title game. Take them. No, I'm taking the Huskies. Plus 19.5. Rivalry game, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, it's a rivalry weekend. Anything can happen. I've got to go with some upsets, and the gut knows that. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the reaction video this weekend, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you disagreed with my analysis of the rankings, let me know. If you disagree with my picks, let me know. But you can't, because we're really good at the picks here at the Ian Fritts Show. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. Bye.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Watts-Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game.
35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There it goes.